Welcome to the Zweigletter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting advice and guidance in your ear. Zweig Group's team of experts have spent more than 3 decades elevating the industry by helping AEP and environmental consulting firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver invaluable management, industry, client, marketing, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweigletter Podcasts, elevating the design industry one episode at a time.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of the Zweigletter Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn. I'm excited to be with you as always. I had a few technical difficulties before we could actually get this episode recorded, but I'm excited to say that we're able to do that right now. I am sitting here with none other than Josh Fowler. Josh is the president of Davis Floyd. It's a civil engineering firm based in the Palmetto State? That's correct. South Carolina is the Palmetto State, yes. And the great state of South Carolina. And they have several offices down there, which we're going to learn about. But Josh as a listener of the Zweigletter Podcast, and we like to reward our listeners of the podcast, those that are loyal and that listen quite a bit. We like to reward those folks with guest spots on the podcast from time to time. And so it's great to have Josh on today and really excited to kind of chat with him to learn a little bit more about what Davis and Floyd is doing in their neck of the woods on the East Coast of the United States. And I think we're going to have a robust conversation for you today. So if you're a regular listener, you're going to really enjoy this one. So without further ado, I want to welcome Josh Floyd to the podcast. Josh, how are you doing today?
Hey, Randy, I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we always start this podcast off by creating a little bit of behind the scenes and background of our guest. And so I'd love for you to share just a little bit of your superhero origin story with our Zweigletter podcast audience. Tell them a little bit about who Josh Fowler is.
Sure, I'd love to. So coming out of high school, I was told that I was good at math and science. And so I ought to think about becoming an engineer. So that's how I wound up in engineering school. And so upon graduation from engineering school, there weren't as many engineering jobs, especially in the civil side, as there are today. So I did the next best thing. I went into construction. So I worked for a large national level contractor for a couple of years right out of school. And then I pivoted into consulting, and that's where I spent most of my career. Randy's in the consulting field, primarily in water and wastewater, a little bit of site development, a little bit of industrial economic development. But that's where I've spent the bulk of my careers in the engineering consultant world. About the middle part of my career, I took a deviation out of consulting and went into the manufacturing space. And so I spent several years working for a large multinational manufacturer, primarily in sales and marketing, but I also worked within business processes and continuous improvement initiatives, and also with strategic planning initiatives. So that was a very good experience. And I probably did that up until around 2017 when I got back into consulting, and ultimately found my way here to Davis and Floyd in 2022. And so I've been here for about 18 months approximately. And as you said, I'm the president, and it's been great so far. It's been a good culmination of, all the things I've learned up to this point, all rolled up into one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that's actually kind of, it's an interesting arc when you look at and hear about your background and experience and kind of where you started out. And I think it's good for young engineers to hear that, you can go into different areas of the industry, right? Because the industry is so big. I mean, you've touched construction, yes. You've touched civil engineering, you've gotten into kind of like the whole materials and manufacturing side of things. And so you've had a chance to kind of try a lot of different angles of this industry. And I always tell people, when you talk about the AEC space, it's a lot larger than people realize. I'd love for you, and then shout out, because I think your alma mater is Georgia Tech. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah. So we definitely want to give some credence to that. My cousin graduated from Georgia Tech with an advanced degree and teaches there along with his wife, and they speak highly of the Ramblin' Wreck. And so I certainly want to give a shout out to Georgia Tech and all the great things that they are doing in engineering and beyond out of the great state of Georgia and the wonderful city of Atlanta. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. So, but back to the conversation, though, about the arc that you took in your career. What would you say to younger people that are studying civil engineering right now and then, trying to decide what their future is going to look like? Certainly with the presence of now AI and all of the technological advancements that we have seen, even in the generation that you've been working, what advice would you give to that young engineer and even that young architect that's wondering what their next step is going to be when they get out of school and what they're going to do next?
Yeah, a couple of things there, Randy. I tell all of our young folks here at Davis and Floyd and, people elsewhere that, you really need to work on building your network and working your network because you never know what kind of doors are going to be open for you, along the way. And so as long as you have that network, the possibilities are almost endless. So that's number one. Number two, I also tell young people that they need to diversify themselves. And what I mean by that is, open yourselves up to things like travel and getting yourselves involved in things that you might not normally get involved in. Again, it's just about building a flexible self for you to take advantage of some of these opportunities that may come. So yeah, building your network, working your network, and diversification of oneself, I think, are two vitally important tools in the toolbox for future success with young folks.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know, and where did you stand on the spectrum when you kind of came out of school, out of Georgia Tech, when it came to really communication? Because I know one of the biggest challenges and since I'm going to date myself now, but I've been involved with this industry since '97 when Mark Zweig first hired me at what was then Zweig, White and Associates. But one of the biggest challenges that I have run across in working with both engineers and architects and even some construction folks is the ability to communicate effectively, right? And a lot of times, architects would rather be seen and not heard. And so I'm curious to know, where did you sit on that spectrum and what did you do specifically to maybe get yourself, if you were more quiet or laid back, what did you do to kind of get yourself out of that turtle shell, if you will, to let folks know that, hey, here I am? Because as you said earlier, your network is your net worth. And that a truer statement could not have been made. And I tell that to any young person that will listen to me. It's more than just about your book smarts. It's also about the relationships that you're out there to build in this wonderful big world that we live in. But specifically for you, what was it? What did you need to do in order to put yourself out there?
Well, fortunately for me, Randy, I've never had to worry about, having to come out of my shell. I don't know what it is. I've just always been able to connect with people and talk. Maybe people didn't necessarily want to hear what I had to say, but I was able to say it. So one thing I've always taught younger, folks in the industry and beyond is that you could have the best idea, the greatest solution, the biggest innovation out there. But if you can't effectively communicate it to the people that matter, you've just wasted your time. And so I really try to drive that home with anybody that'll listen, because I think communication is the center of everything. And we try to preach that here at Davis Floyd as well. Yeah,
I love that. And not to get into your housekeeping there at Davis and Floyd, but do you guys do a lot of personal and professional development around just the whole concept of communication?
We have recently embarked down that path. I don't think historically we've done a whole lot of that, but recently we started that. January of this year, we hired a consultant who kind of does leadership training, especially in regards to communication and collaboration. And we had our first training session back in January, and we've got our second one this week, in fact.
Oh, so nice. Great.
The timing on the question was great, Randy.
Yeah. Well, I certainly would love to hear what the outcome is like as a follow-up, because I think it's one of the simplest ways for you to engage, especially this younger generation, right? So Gen Alpha will be out soon, but we've got Gen Z that we're dealing with, and you probably have some Gen Z there, and you have millennials, and every generation has its own unique set of challenges. I'm Gen X, so I know what that was like. I was part of that latchkey generation. And, I think we were the last fundamental generation that is able to speak in multiple languages, right? Because I speak the language of the boomers and the great generation, but I also can hang with the new technical kids. And even with my Gen Zers that are running around my house and my one Gen Alpha that I have, I can speak their language a little bit. Can't keep up with them nearly as much as I'd like to, but, times change. Generations afford us the ability to do things differently, right? And so the way that you or your parents would have done things or your grandparents are much different than the way some of the young people that you're hiring right out of college today are doing things and will do things as they move forward. So I think it's incumbent upon every company, whether they're in this space or not, to be involved in engaging especially their young people where they are to help them to be the best version of themselves, especially as it pertains to communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about, being flexible and adaptable. And you're right. I grew up in the same generation as you did. And I think that probably benefited me to be able to communicate to different, personality types, cultures, et cetera. And, the companies that don't evolve with the process are going to get left behind, I think. And, right now we're dealing with 4 different generations in the workforce. Yeah. And in 2 years, according to the data I've seen, over half of the workforce is going to be Gen Z and millennials.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn how to embrace it, evolve, et cetera, especially when it comes to communication.
Yeah. So walk us through how you ended up at the doorstep of Davis and Floyd, coming out of the materials and manufacturing space that served this industry. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct for part of it. So part of the time I was at NOV, we did serve the water space.
Okay.
And then I was a gentleman retired on the senior leadership team, and I was asked to take over his position. And at the time, it's the petroleum marketing division. And I told my boss at the time, I said, I don't know anything about that marketplace. And he said to me, don't worry, you're smart, you'll figure it out. And so that's exactly what I did. And within, a matter of 6-8 months, we had that thing humming. We grew at 20% year over year, 3 years in a row, just again, digging in, understanding the objectives of the businesses we're trying to serve and tailoring our business to meet those needs.
Yeah, I love that. And that's actually a good reminder to anyone. I know the Marie Forleo talks about everything is figure outable. You figured out how to do it, right? And it's like a lot of times with, it's always a trick question when somebody asks you if you know how to do something. Even if the answer is no, the answer should be yes. Because in the back of your mind, you should be trying to figure it out. And that goes for all the young whippersnappers, especially at your firm and anybody else that's listening to this, because we have a large audience of young up and coming design professionals. And I'm always telling them the answer is yes, because there is we carry these wonderful devices around. And for those of you that are listening, I'm holding up my cell phone. It is smart and dumb at the same time. But if you know how to use it, then you can glean all the information and answers that you need, or at least be pointed in the right direction of where to go to get the information and answers that you're looking for. So that's my simple commercial for that. But so you get to Davis and Floyd. What was it like coming to a firm? You guys have been around like 70 plus years. So this is a firm that is entrenched in the, as I call it, the culture of the design industry. And so with your experience and background, what was it like coming to Davis and Floyd and taking over the leadership role of president?
Yeah, so I knew several folks within Davis and Floyd just from years in the industry, and had been around them for years, a well-respected firm, and always admired what they did and how they did it. And so when I got this opportunity, I was very candid up front and said, hey, this is a dream opportunity for me. And so that was, really what I tried to drive home, that this is truly a dream. I mean, it's a family-owned company, been around, like you said, for 70 years, and they do things the right way. And so I wanted to be a part of that. And fortunately for me, it did work out. And so coming in the door, it was exactly what I had anticipated. It's a great bunch of people who care deeply about what they do, about the communities they serve. And so, I've had a lot of fun along the way. Again, 18 months in, and it definitely was the right decision for me. It's a great bunch of folks.
Yeah. And so I would imagine, what was it like interacting with the family part of the business, right? Because that is typically, whenever we look at I've done some research for strategic planning and for ownership transition, and there's always that question, right? I remembered coming in and meeting with some of those design professionals that have been around the block quite a bit, but had never considered or thought about transition planning, proper transition planning. And it sounds like Davis and Floyd had a real plan for that. How was it like interacting with the family as you came into your leadership position?
Yeah, no, it really went smoothly, honestly. We had so many conversations coming into it that, once I came in, I hit the door running. I hit all the things we said we were going to do within the first, 6 months, 12 months, we were able to accomplish because we had buy-in. And, not just from the Davis family, but also from the senior leadership that was already here. Thinking about our VPs, and I think the youngest tenured VP has been here almost 20 years.
Right.
And so that says a lot about the longevity, of the firm and the leadership here. So, again, all those folks were part of the process of bringing me in. And so it made it really seamless once I got here, and we started to, pull back the curtain, get some initiatives going, et cetera, in order to really make a difference going forward.
That's nice. So when you think of like getting into your role there at Davis and Floyd, what is your leadership philosophy and approach that you've taken since you've been there? And I might add that you joined the company kind of still in the midst of the pandemic. What was that like for you?
I mean, the pandemic was pretty much coming to a close when I came on board. Fortunately, that really made it easy to get around and meet the team and really dig into the business. I really can't imagine coming in and say, 2020 when the pandemic was full bore and go. But I came in 2022, and by then things had pretty much settled down and we were pretty much back to business as normal.
Yeah. So, and then thinking about just your experiences throughout working with design firms as well as working in the materials and manufacturing space, what do you think is your singular leadership philosophy that you've brought to Davis and Floyd that you continue to just drive home on a regular basis with anyone that will listen?
Yeah, well, that's the key. Anyone that will listen. So, we kind of touched on it a couple of times already, but if I could describe my leadership philosophy or style in one word, it would be adaptable. Every person and situation are different. So to apply a one size fits all approach wouldn't make a whole lot of sense from a leadership perspective. So adaptability, I think, has been one of my biggest strengths, over the years from a leadership standpoint.
Okay. I love that. Adaptability. And are you from South Carolina as well, or?
I am. I was born and raised in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and lived here in the upstate of South Carolina for most of my life.
Yeah. Beautiful country. Beautiful country.
Absolutely.
I've been to Greenville, as the locals say. Is that correct? Or something?
It's Greenville.
It's Greenville. Greenville. Yeah. So that's cool. But you guys have 4 locations as currently, because you just expanded and had an acquisition in Beaufort, South Carolina. But give us the list of where all of your locations are currently.
Yeah. So we actually have 6 locations here in South Carolina.
Okay.
Yep. Headquartered in Greenwood. We also have Greenville, where I'm currently sitting, Columbia, Florence, Charleston, Beaufort. So 6 locations, approximately 160 people spread across those offices.
Okay. Yeah, I love Charleston. It's a beautiful city. And
yes, it is.
Columbia is where the university is. So
yep.
There's a lot of talk about them right now at the time we're recording this. So I think everybody's hoping that they finish what they started. So let's talk a little bit about, as you guys, when you joined Davis and Floyd, was there already an acquisition strategy in place with the company, or was that something that you kind of brought to the table and said, hey, I'd like to figure out a way for us to grow, not just organically, but also potentially through acquisition?
Well, they certainly had talked about it, plenty over the years, as you can imagine. But, I think one of the reasons that they liked what I brought to the table was because I did have some M&A experience, on both sides, on the acquisition side and on the, the buyee side, if that's even a word. But I've been acquired and I've done the acquiring, and I've been a part of 4 different integration teams. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly associated with M&A. And so I came in with the experience, a lot of lessons learned and best practices, and I wanted to, be able to apply that to Davis and Floyd in terms of, setting the company up for the next quarter century. That was my theme coming in, is, hey, let's set this place up for the next quarter century, because in 5 years we'll be celebrating 3/4 centuries, as a company. And so I really want to get that next generation set for success.
Yeah. It's amazing when you think about it. It's like and it kind of makes sense. I mean, a lot of times people say, I want to set a company up for the next 100 years. Man, you don't even know what's around the corner, right? And so
no, you don't.
So 25 years, that's even adventurous. But I mean, I think it's a good start, right? Because you need to have a plan in place and at least some type of target or goal to shoot towards. Otherwise, you'll never hit it. So, I mean, that's the biggest idea. Tell me, and I'm curious to know, because we've had people on recently when we've talked about companies that are growth through acquisition, and you and I are kind of contemporaries in age. And so we've seen this industry change. What I mean by that specifically is just the acquisition culture, the M&A culture that exists now, and actually is really taken off in just the last couple of years, whether through private equity money flooding this marketplace or just companies that have finally decided to dip their toe into the M&A space. What are your thoughts overall for this industry when it comes to mergers and acquisitions?
Well, 2 things I'll say. You hit on one earlier with regards to transition planning. A lot of companies in our space especially are terrible at it. They think, well, I'm going to work forever. I've got plenty of time to plan. Well, you turn around and it's time to retire and you didn't have a transition plan in place. So I think that's driven a lot of the M&A over the last decade, we'll say. But what's really been surprising to me over the last, handful of years is the private equity piece. If 20 years ago, I probably would have never envisioned how much of an impact the private equity dollars were going to have on the M&A market within the AEC space. It just seems to grow and grow and grow. And I've really been surprised by that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know some people that are using a lot of private equity money to grow. And I've seen their growth in the last 5 years is kind of like off the chart, like things that we would have never talked about in the 90s that are happening now. And it's just like, man, it's pretty impressive. And also when you have the right people doing it, it can really make a huge difference. So
absolutely.
So that's really exciting. So talk a little bit about what you guys are doing at Davis and Floyd to embrace the new technological age that is taking place right before our very eyes. What have you been able to kind of bring to the table outside of the experience that you just mentioned with regard to your M&A background? What have you been able to bring to the table at Davis and Floyd on a technological standpoint that you're really excited about and you're hopeful for the future?
Well, the biggest thing, Randy, is just simple openness. A lot of people are reluctant to change. And so just coming in and trying to spread the messages, hey, there's a lot of stuff out there we could be using to serve our clients better and to make our lives easier. Let's be open to that. Let's embrace that because we're going to have to evolve, with the marketplace or we'll get left behind. And so, out of that, identified several things internally that we feel like we need to, bring up to speed from a technological standpoint. I mean, just within the last 18 months, we've overhauled our benefits program and implementation. We've introduced a more efficient social media management system. We've enhanced our cybersecurity systems and procedures, and we've begun the process of implementing a new ERP system and also a new CRM system. So, that's just really scratching the surface and it helps us with our blocking and tackling, if you will. And it helps us be more effective and efficient in what we're trying to do day to day.
Yeah. Well, and I want to point out here, you are, some would say, oh, you're kind of majoring in the minors, right? When you think of all those things are little things. When you think of the big picture, everybody's like, well, no, I want the grandiose plan. But sometimes majoring in the minors is really important, right? And I look at that as foundational structure. If you build the foundation structure properly within an organization, you're always going to have success. And what does that foundation look like? Well, it looks like having a solid social media program. It, like you said, benefits and just the reason why people want to come through those doors every day and come to work on a regular basis. You want to have that tightened up. Certainly, cybersecurity is a big issue. And it's one that actually, the numbers are off the charts, but more than 2/3 of firms are not adequately prepared if there was ever any type of cyber attack that takes place within the confines of their organization. And that's kind of a frightening statistic when you think about it. So just the simple fact that you're doing that is important. And then, of course, ERPs and then a CRM when it comes to just management of relationships with all of the people that come through those doors, all of the organizations and individuals that you are in business with, some for a long time, right? Because I would imagine that you probably still have some of the first clients that Davis and Floyd had when you opened the door 70 years ago, probably some municipalities and some other places that have been working with you guys for multiple generations. How do you go about developing and keeping those relationships strong so that they will still be there in the future, right? And those all of that plays into why you want to kind of major in the minors when it comes to those little bricks by bricks that you build to build a solid foundation for an organization. Talk to me a little bit about, since you mentioned social media, I know you have some interesting strategies as it pertains to like sales and marketing and how you've integrated that into Davis and Floyd's operations. Can you talk a little bit about that without giving away all of your secrets, but at least kind of giving us a little bit of a blueprint for what you guys are doing now in 2024 at the time of recording this, that's really moving the needle for you from a sales and marketing perspective in this industry?
Well, I got to share a secret, Randy. It's not going to be any kind of splashy AI-driven technology that I'm going to share with you. No, seriously. So, to me, it's about first and foremost getting a BD culture instilled throughout the organization.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of, engineering firms, I don't think, embrace just because we're engineers. Our job is to design a project. Our job is to satisfy clients, et cetera. But, it's really important from a sales and marketing standpoint to instill that BD culture throughout the organization. And I've had plenty of people over the years say, hey, I have zero part in the BD game. I'm not a BD guy or I'm not a BD gal. I was like, yes, you are. Because I tell people the easiest and best way to develop new business is to provide high quality client service and project delivery. And if you do that, you're in business development. You're going to get repeat business, word of mouth business, et cetera. And then, to follow along with that, just simply understanding our clients' needs in the marketplace is critical to what we're trying to do. If we don't truly understand that, we could throw all the social media, digital marketing, AI, whatever technology you want to call up. All that's for naught if we don't truly understand what the marketplace needs and what our clients need.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're preaching to the choir there. It's, when I think of it, it's like, and I always tell people that business development is not as hard as you think it is. I don't go so far as to say if you can fog a mirror, then you can do business development. But I do believe that there are parts of that are actually true, because again, everybody that I talk to, even the young people, I'm like, listen, you have friends, right? Right. Okay. Well, your clients can be your friends as well.
Yep.
And it's important for you to want to develop a friendship with the people that you do work with, because then you are speaking a language of relationship and not transaction. Because, we can go to the Quick Time or Quick Trip or Love's or Pilot gas station and do a transaction, but I can't get this site development done short of having a relationship with the client where I understand them.
People like to do business with who they like and who they feel comfortable with and who they trust. It's not rocket science.
It really isn't, but I think sometimes it bears repeating as often as someone will listen to that, because it isn't as hard as you think. And now if you couple, and this is a perfect way for us to dovetail into my next question, but if you couple the fact that, a lot of young design professionals are actually really good at what they do as designers, it's then taking that skill set and marrying it to what you talked about earlier with the leadership, with the communication, being able to walk into a room and hold a conversation with somebody and engage someone. Show the people that you actually care about the problems that they're trying to solve, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here, right? We're solving other people's problems.
Absolutely.
And when we figure out the best way and most efficient way to do that, that certainly sets itself up for repeat business. So in that vein, I would love for you kind of to talk about the efforts that you guys are taking at Davis and Floyd to build your people, to build the culture of the company. You mentioned earlier a program that you're doing. You brought on an outside company, an outside individual to do some consulting in the leadership space, which we'll talk about culture. We'll talk about communication. We'll talk about routine and a lot of the other things that all of your people need to be fully embracing in order to bring their best version of themselves to the workplace. What else are you guys doing to build the culture of Davis and Floyd for the next, I won't say 70, for the next 25 years, as you said earlier?
Yeah, well, that's pretty good, because I'm probably not going to be around past those 25. So, I wish I was, but no, seriously. What we really try to do is work with each team member to let them know that they truly play a critical role in what we're trying to do here at Davis and Floyd. And the ultimate goal, again, is to provide high quality client service and build our communities, et cetera. And, as leaders, we've got to do a really good job of providing meaningful opportunities for each team member that give them a sense of pride, ownership, and personal satisfaction. And so, especially when you talk about the younger generations, Gen Z, millennial, that's really what is important to them. And so companies I'll just say this, that when I came into the industry many, many years ago, it wasn't like that. We were who we were. We were told to, go get something done, and you got this long to do it. And if you didn't get it done, you get your hand slapped. But you got to evolve your way of thinking and dealing with, young staff and young team members, because it's a different generation.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we just try to make sure that everybody understands how they play a role in what it is we're trying to do here at Davis and Floyd. And again, flexibility is always key. You're going to hear me probably talk about that too much, but, we try to tell people the only constant in life is change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, our firm, our team members, our clients, and the marketplace are at the center of all that. And so we just got to make sure we're evolving to meet those needs. And again, it's just all about communicating to our team members, hey, this is what we've got to do. We got to evolve. We got to continue to improve and get better for our clients' sake, for our community's sake. and for our company's sake.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you guys have a legacy to uphold. Again, 70
Absolutely.
years is nothing to sneeze at. And in that 70-year period of time, you've built up a lot of, as we say, street cred, and probably throughout the whole state of South Carolina for that matter. And, I mean, so I would imagine that your goal really is to let these young people know the shoulders that they're standing on and what the possibilities look like for them. Any retention strategies that you could share with us that you have utilized and found really successful to keep that back door closed, right? The proverbial back door that every design firm is so aware of, but sometimes can't control when it opens and closes, right? And I'm speaking specifically of retention. Recruitment is outside of, firm growth and the ROI of investing and becoming a part of something bigger than yourselves, is just this whole concept of just keeping the good people in-house as long as you possibly can. Have you found any strategies that you've been able to employ, or maybe that you brought from someplace else to Davis and Floyd, that have worked to keep that back door closed and to keep your people engaged above and beyond what we've already talked about? Is there anything else that you guys have found to be really successful, that a little bit of wisdom that you can impart to some of your peers in the industry?
Yeah. So first of all, I really love the metaphor of the back door. And with that said, so when I came in at Davis and Floyd, I realized there was a crack in the back door. Mm. And so not my first job, but a major initiative of mine was to close that door and lock it. And so over the course of, I would say, a 12-month period, we did a complete evaluation of benefits, everything from our holidays, to our PTO policy, to, our health insurance, et cetera. But we also brought in a third party to do a compensation analysis as well. Because at the end of the day, our culture says that if we can stay market relative in terms of how we're compensating our people and how we're taking care of them from a benefit standpoint, we're going to retain them. So you spend all this money and time and effort to get in top talent. And so you definitely want to hang on to them and not let them walk out the back door. So that was a major initiative of mine last year. And we spent a lot of time trying to get it right. And I think we're there. And so hopefully we're going to start to see the fruits of our labor. We've already seen a big drop in turnover rate over the last year and a half, 2 years. And so I think it's due to those initiatives.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to that. Because that is like the Rosetta Stone of our industry when it comes to solving that problem and making sure that you create an environment where people want to be, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like in the esteemed words of that great song from that comedy Cheers, and wherever you want to go to a place where everyone knows your name, because the name is important. And I've talked to people and recruited people out of companies where they didn't feel 100% welcomed or wanted. And unfortunately, that still exists to this day. And so that's why a lot of firms do lose out on some really amazing talent, because they don't take the time to really get to know them, to engage them and meet them where they are, right? Because where they are and where you want them to be are two different places, right? And one hand is down low here and the other hand is up high for those of you that are listening to this. But the idea is that we want to help them on that trajectory, that hockey stick up and to the right. And they're not going to be able to do that by themselves. They're going to need the help of the leadership of an organization. And it sounds like you and your team are taking that task on head on and making some significant inroads with it. So I certainly want to applaud you for that. Anything else with regard to creating a diverse work environment, or anything that you guys have found helpful for you at Davis and Floyd?
Probably I would just say that, no matter what we do, we always want to keep an eye on our culture and our core values. And the question is, how do we take that and evolve it to, as you said, meet people where they are? Because as the generations are going to continue to change, we've got to be able to deliver, right? We've got to be able to come up with ways to engage our new staff and our, old staff as well. I hate to say the word old because I'm one of those guys, but anyway, experienced staff, we'll call them.
Seasoned.
Exactly. Seasoned. I like that a lot. But, just really trying to make sure we're keeping an eye on the cultural stuff, as we do change, because we don't want to get away from what we believe in, what our core values are, what's built the legacy over the last 70 years. Yeah. And so we really are intentional about making sure we stay focused on that.
Yeah. Well, that's a full-time job. So Somebody has to do it.
I got a good team.
Yes, it sounds like it. And I've talked to a few of them, so I certainly can concur with that. As we wind up here, and certainly I can't ignore the elephant in the room, and that elephant starts with A and begins with I. I would be curious to know how Davis and Floyd, how you are embracing AI within your organization, and what are you learning based on this experience? You personally, as you guys start to incorporate AI, both today and in the future of what Davis and Floyd is ultimately going to look like.
Yeah, so we are in the process of developing an AI policy for the company. We think that's important because, this AI train is literally building up steam going down the tracks. And so number one, we don't want to get run over by the train. And number two, we don't want to get left behind. So we're trying to put together a policy that we can, spread out firm wide of how, this can benefit our clients, how it could benefit us as a firm, but also, how do we do it in a responsible manner, right? Because there's a lot of, ethical, things tied to that, and responsibility and ethics and all that have been brought up as part of some of this, copyright infringements. There's all kinds of tentacles that have been tied to AI, right? I think there was a recent lawsuit somewhere, a copyright infringement because of some AI that pulled some stuff off the internet that was copyrighted. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously the bugs aren't all worked out, but they're going to get worked out. So we're just trying to get out in front of it. In terms of embracing it, we know it's here. We know we got to figure out how best to use it, but use it in a responsible manner. So, I mean, we're going to start with, some, quote unquote, small things that will, hopefully help, improve efficiencies in some areas of our operations, and then go from there. Let's see where it takes us. But it goes kind of back to what we were talking about at the beginning for technologies, just being open to it. Yeah. What are the possibilities? How can this help our clients? How can this help our communities? How can it help us do a better job each and every day?
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, I mean, if we're good and successful at this, then this will help prepare us for whatever other technology might be coming down the line that we don't know about. Right. Because there's all kinds of stuff that's coming down the line we have no clue about.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, man, we can't even really peer around the corner because we're so caught up in what's right in front of us at the moment, because it is a lot to unpack. I mean, AI is every day I'm learning something new, and I've just made a commitment to, even at my age, I've made a commitment to spending like 30 minutes a day just learning about artificial intelligence and what it looks like and what it could look like. And I'm utilizing it with this podcast. I'm utilizing it with other podcasts that I work on for other clients. It is a blessing for sure, but you have to understand how to utilize it and use it to your benefit. Because I think there is coming a time when you will sit down at your desk on a Monday morning and you will talk or speak out instructions and directions on build a culvert here, I need a site plan for a 10-unit development with mixed use. And I mean, you will literally be speaking out what you're creating, right? And so it doesn't change the fact that as design professionals that you're going to stop creating. You will just use tools that will enhance that process and just probably allow you to be a lot more efficient at it. And so that is, I think, is really important. And I think that, yeah, I mean, machines are great, but they're not infallible, and neither are human beings for that matter. But the last thing I need is for AI to create some rounding error that in a building that I'm in on a regular basis. So that's why there's always going to be a need for a good engineer, a good architect, a good design professional to be able to check these things and to be able to design these things in a way that can leverage the use of AI while making their job a little bit easier.
Yeah, we just got to be really careful too as an industry because, the AEC industry, as you mentioned, is pretty diverse, but a lot of it, centers around public health and safety. If we build a building, it better stand, it better not fall. If we design a drinking water plant, it better not get people sick. So we just have to be careful as, engineering professionals, in my case, to make sure we're paying attention to complacency or lack thereof in this case, not take our eye off the ball and let this technology make us, lazy or complacent. Because again, our number one job is to protect the public.
Yeah.
So just from an ethical standpoint, we have to be really careful and hold each other accountable to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. No, you said it 100%. So if anybody listening to this wants to learn more about Davis and Floyd, wants to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, you can certainly contact me through LinkedIn. You can visit our Davis and Floyd website at davisfloyd.com. And feel free to reach out to me at any time. I love talking to people in the industry and outside the industry even.
Yeah.
And so definitely reach out.
And we will put everything that we spoke about, as well as contact information, to both your LinkedIn and to your email and all that. We'll put on our show notes for this particular episode of the Zweig Letter podcast, so everybody can take advantage of what we've talked about today. And, I'm certainly always curious to know if there's something that really resonates with you based on this conversation. So certainly reach out to us. You can always shoot me an email at rwilburn@zweiggroup.com. And, I certainly look forward to connecting with each and every individual that reaches out to us. That's how we connected. And, after Lisa featured, we'll also include a link to the article that Lisa Andreessen wrote for you a while back in the Zweig Letter. In addition, for those that want to read it, so that they can gain a little bit more insight into you and into what you guys are doing there at Davis and Floyd. So
perfect.
Thank you, Josh, for joining me. I apologize for the technical hangups earlier, but like you said, it's Monday, so things happen, right? So
absolutely.
At the time of recording this, that's what we were dealing with. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on the Zweig Letter podcast. It was certainly an honor to share the stage with you and to hear your story. And we wish you nothing but continued success with your company and what you guys are doing. And we'll be sitting eagerly by on the sidelines watching you guys over the next 25 years to see what the next iteration of Davis and Floyd looks like. But again, congratulations.
Thank you.
We're so glad that we had this chance to have this conversation. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Randy. I enjoyed the conversation as well, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome. Okay, folks. Well, that's it. That's another episode of the Zweig Letter podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, you can learn more about the Zweig Letter by visiting us at www.zweiggroup.com. You can subscribe to the Zweig Letter podcast right there on the website. It's a free subscription. You can also subscribe for your whole company to get what I think is probably one of the longest running newsletters in the design industry space. They have been writing articles since 1992. And I don't do public math, but that's about 32 plus years of newsletters. And good old Mark Zweig is still writing a byline every week, as well as Chad Kleinens and the rest of the amazing Zweig Group team of advisors. So I certainly want to encourage you to subscribe to this newsletter to gain more insight and information. And as always, you can subscribe to the Zweig Letter podcast and really just follow us on Apple Podcast or Spotify or your preferred podcast player of choice. And you can now find the Zweig Letter podcast on YouTube. That's right. The podcast, all 230 plus episodes of the Zweig Letter podcast are now available on YouTube. So if you're a regular listener to podcasts through the YouTube platform, you can now listen to our podcast there. And so I certainly want to encourage you to check it out. And if you like the podcast, you want to rate and review us, give us a rating and review. Let us know what you think about the podcast. If there's anything we can improve, we will certainly take note of that. And hopefully you'll hear about that on a future episode. I'm Randy Wilburn, the host of the Zweig Letter podcast. We'll see you back here soon with another new episode. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zweig Letter podcast. We hope that you can be part of elevating the industry and that you can apply our advice and information to your daily professional life. For a free digital subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.